Thank you for tuning into our Retail Next webinar, a crash course in presenting virtually, a primer for reps. This webinar was intended to give viewers a top line on putting together product presentations virtually, best practices, equipment needed, tips and tools. AFA Canada members are invited to book their own one-on-one training session if you feel you want to get a little bit more into the weeds of it for your own specific needs. If that's something that you are interested in, just reach out to me and I'll set you up. You can send me an email at michelle@afacanada.com and I'll get you rolling on it.
Hello there, everyone. Thank you for joining us on behalf of our fabulous board of directors and Janelle LeBlanc, president of AFA Canada. Welcome to our Retail Next webinar, crash course in how to present virtually a primer for reps. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Michelle Kaufman. I'm Operations and Events Manager for AFA Canada. From the beginning of the shutdown, we have worked really hard on trying to bring you guys content that you can use and be safe at the same time. So we have content now about every 2 weeks until the end of March. We hope you'll join us on those for future webinars. A couple of things about today's session. It is being recorded and we'll post it on our YouTube channel afterwards. Probably not till tomorrow. If you have any questions during the session, use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen and we'll answer them as best we can. I'll be on the screen the whole time and monitoring the questions as well. So let's just get into it. Let me introduce our panelists. We have Becky Collins. She is Senior Account Executive for Kodiak. When I was practicing this earlier, I said Kodak. I'm like, is Kodak even, do they still exist? Anyways, thank you, Becky. And Crystal Campbell, KMC Agency. Crystal wears 2 hats because she's a retailer and a supplier, and they are both very active and wonderful board of directors. So ladies, why don't you do your introductions and then we'll start the questions. Becky?
Perfect. So as Michelle said, I'm Becky and have been with Kodiak for about 6 years now. And before that was an agent. But yeah, I think really for me, when we were kind of talking about, what's the most important thing about virtual presenting and that kind of thing, it's about, for me, it's about being authentic and being yourself and finding some way to do that online and feel comfortable, because ultimately, we have to feel comfortable, even though it's uncomfortable situations sometimes, and there's still nerves. Just even before this, we were Michelle and Chris and I were talking about being nervous for this, even though it's, just literally answering questions. But it's just something different again. So just making sure that at the end of the day that you're being yourself. And I think that's really comes across whenever you're presenting. So that's me.
Crystal?
Hi, I'm Crystal Campbell. I have an agency where I sell neon footwear and also wool slippers by Green Comfort. And yeah, this is totally new to all of us. In my previous sort of life, I was also a product manager, so always used to presenting in person. And but there were always challenges, translating into different languages and everything else. But it's just a fun time, I think. So I'm excited to talk to Michelle and Becky and, help each other out. And I think the best thing that we remember is that stuff happens. We can be so stressed out about having the perfect presentation, but nothing's ever perfect these days, especially, right? So, yeah.
So ladies, why don't you run down for us the various pieces of equipment you need for your virtual presentation? Becky, want to start?
Yeah, so for me, the equipment depends on like what kind of presentation I'm doing. If it's really kind of a conversation with the customer about, marketing or a business update or that kind of thing, I tend to use the space that I'm in now. And I do have a separate webcam kind of connected to my computer. And I have a ring light as well behind my monitor, which if I turn it off, you can see how dark it is. So much needed if you want to see my face, which I don't always want to show my face, but definitely helps. I think that contact is super important. But if I'm doing a booking appointment, like for fall 21, then I actually have another space in my house, a small space that I use as kind of like my studio setup. And for that, I use the ring light again and the webcam, and also then I take my laptop over there. Just so that it gives me a little bit more flexibility as far as, I can show my presentation and the shoes kind of at the same time. So yeah, so for me, it depends. The equipment I use really depends on what kind of presentation I'm doing.
Crystal, I had one question or one comment that came in, Crystal, to make sure that your mic is turned up or you're close to your mic, because apparently we're a little quieter. So yeah, just move forward a bit. And what about you and your equipment that you, okay.
These are the things that we were talking about beforehand, that stuff happens, and to be prepared. Exactly. I will say too, so right now I have my fancy dancy pilot headset on, which is because my daughter both my kids are at home learning. And so my daughter's little office is there. But when I present, I use my, the microphone that it's attached to the webcam. So I don't have like headphones on, just because I don't want to be attached. I want to be able to kind of move around if I'm able to.
And what about a virtual background, Becky?
So again, that depends on what kind of presentation it is. If it's something that's a little bit more casual, then I tend to leave my background as my office with my kids' lovely artwork, because this is a part of my life and who I am. If it's something that's a little bit more serious, or it's a confidential conversation and I want the customer to feel like, just that it's a bit more private, then I do have a background that I can throw up very quickly. I don't know if you can see that now, Michelle. Yeah, so I just use this, as I need to. But again, not in every situation, because I think at the end of the day, when we're missing that kind of face-to-face contact, we still need a way to like kind of be personal and create that, what's the word I'm looking for? Relationship. And I think, the customer, my customer, learning a little bit more about me, in my space and how I'm working, I think really helps with that relationship and that understanding. So.
Yeah, I think that authenticity has become a real key thing. I mean, we see videos of celebrities now who are doing interview and they're sitting in their kitchens. So
Yeah.
we're all authenticity, and not being perfect is perfectly acceptable.
Yeah.
And it makes us human.
Not being perfect.
Crystal's back. It sounds like she's coming back. Oh, she's a little robotic still, but
this wasn't planned.
no.
This really wasn't planned.
You're a little robot. You're still robotic, Crystal. We might lose her again. I was going to say, for me, like I used to get really stressed out about like if my kids came down to ask me a question or something like that. And for me, it really sank in. Alanis Morissette was on. Oh, she
just went out. And
Hydro went out. There she.
Okay, Crystal's hydro just went out. She's sent off a note.
Yeah.
Our hydro just went out.
Oh, she's connected on her phone, but she's still in and out. But anyway, so for me, it was Alanis Morissette. I think she was on Jimmy Kimmel or something live. And it was like she was in her studio and all of her band were in their studio. And she was singing, but she had her toddler. She was holding her toddler while she was singing. And the toddler was like asking questions, and then she'd answer and then sing. And then the toddler would join in. And for me, it was like, that's when it really like sunk in. That it was like, okay, like we're all in this together. Like there are a lot of things where it's like, okay, we all have our own circumstances, but ultimately this virtual thing, we're all trying to figure out and find the best way. But, my kids are here. Like that's my reality. You know what I mean? So yeah, they might come and ask questions. They might be in the background. It's just, that's part of, part of what we're dealing with. And there's so many reps and retailers in the same situation. Like we're all trying to wear multiple hats. So, but just seeing those celebrity figures, like, I mean, I hate to say it, but it kind of just validated, just made me feel better that it's like, okay, I don't need to be stressed out about it. This is part of life now. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we're almost a year into this, and I think we're all a lot better than we were in April, in May, in June, and even July. So let's talk about the technology. Just run through the different platforms that you have used and that you prefer to use, and if there's any differences with them.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, at work wise, we use Zoom all the time. It's kind of the platform that's connected for us, but I've also used Teams as well. And my kids for their schooling use Teams as well there too. So, I mean, for the most part, if the retailer doesn't have a preference, I use Zoom just because that's what I tend to use on a day-to-day basis and am more comfortable with. But if the retailer is more comfortable with Teams, then I use Teams, and they're all quite similar. Like you can, share your screen sharing. You can see participants. They all have a chat box. They're kind of all similar. It's just really, at the end of the day, when you're doing the presenting, you want to make sure that you're comfortable with whatever technology you're using, because you don't want to get into it and then kind of not know how to do something, not know how to share, or not know how to get the sound. You want to just make it as easy for you as possible and for the retailer, because of course, when something goes wrong, it adds to that stress, and ultimately you just, you can't panic, you have to stay calm. So
When you make an appointment, do you ask the retailer their preference?
usually I do. I would ask them if they have a preference. If not, I send them a Zoom link. Because like I said, because that's what I'm most familiar with. And in most cases, I think most retailers now are familiar with both. But there are some retailers who, like I said, I mean, they use Teams within their own kind of intercompany, so that's what they prefer. But yeah, I mean, it's when you send the link ahead of time with Zoom, it's good, because if they don't have it, then they have an opportunity to kind of download it and get prepared, as opposed to, you know, doing it a couple minutes before and then struggling to get logged in or whatever that might be. So yeah,
And
that's
stick,
that's
yep.
my mom.
Hi.
Hi, Mom.
And
Yep.
sticking with the technology, hi, do you primarily use Wi-Fi or a hard connection? And
So
why?
yeah, so my computer is plugged into our router right now, but when I'm doing booking appointments, it depends. So I tend to be on the Wi-Fi, but what I'll do is I often will call in with my phone not on the Wi-Fi as a backup. And that way, if I lose connection, at least I haven't lost the appointment altogether. I still have some form of connectivity that I can say to the customer, hey, the Wi-Fi dropped out, or whatever the case is. But it's definitely more stable when you're connected directly to the router, in my experience. And keep in mind, I live in the middle of nowhere. So our internet is like point to point, but still. So
And describe a typical setup for your various meeting types.
So again, for me, it just depends on what type of meeting it is. For the most part, I work here. If it's, business updates or marketing, even internally, like for meetings, I tend to work here, and sales meetings, same thing. Have done it all kind of from this setup, and I have everything I need here. Like I said, my ring lighting, which lighting is like super key. I have my webcam, and I always have water close by because it's very necessary to hydrate. And then, yeah, like I said, I have a little small space in my basement that I've carved out and use as like a setup for bookings, which is like literally just some of the tools that I used to use at like the London show and Ottawa show, repurposed. I have like a 6-foot table that I used to take to the show. And I have some shelving that I used to bring to the show that I keep the shoes on. Even the lights that I used in the hotel, I have them propped up now. And so have really really tried to take what I already had and make it work in kind of a little studio kind of area. So looks like we have Crystal back.
Do we have you back, Crystal?
I can hear you guys just fine. So am I still a robot?
A little bit.
Your video is, but the sound is definitely better.
Yeah. Okay.
See, this is, you can't control the hydro.
No.
So Becky, sorry, Crystal, I'm just gonna ask Becky again so we can, because you're still a little robotic. So you have a studio space for your actual presentations, but when you're just having a regular meeting, say with head office or whatever, you sit in your office where you are at now.
Yeah, and like studio is like, I mean, I use that loosely. Like it's not like it sounds fancier than it is. It's literally like a small space that I've carved out, like a 10-foot space that I have carved out of our basement. Like I said, with a 6-foot table and you know, shelving for the shoes that I can show the shoes. It's not anything fancy, but at least it allows me to like keep my samples there. And then you know, before the meeting, I go take my laptop and my ring light over there and kind of get that piece set up. But yeah.
And when you're in the
Yeah,
studio,
I just did turn off. Can you hear me better if I turn my camera off?
yes,
Yeah? Okay.
yes.
Okay.
So Crystal, what about you, since we have you? Talk about some of the platforms that you use in your preferred, or are you strictly Zoom? And I know you do a lot of Facebook Lives as well.
Well, I mean, oh dear.
Oh dear.
Oh dear, it's right.
Okay, so generally I use Zoom, but of course, if someone is more comfortable with another platform, then we would figure it out. I always have my showroom sort of in the back, and right now my store is my showroom. And I'm the same as Becky. I use lights from old shoe shows and shelving. But I also have a PowerPoint presentation that I share my screen on. So if something like this happens, you know, even downtown London, where my store is, the internet is really crappy. But I will have the PowerPoint presentation. So as a backup, if something happens, I can call the customer on the phone and we can go through it that way. I've been fortunate with my brands because they've been able to give us, you know, really good photos and sort of videos on the feet and things like that. But I think it's also easy enough that we don't have to have professional quality, you know, photos like that. Something as good as a cell phone picture on a white back, the process, just to have a backup, as we can see here now.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing from you guys is you always have to have a backup. Like you have to have a backup plan in case your technology goes down, as it just has for Crystal again.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like Crystal too. I like having either presentation or even the catalog to share on the screen. That way also it helps keep the meeting on track, because I think also we want to be cognizant of retailers' time, because we're, you know, we're used to presenting in person and we know how long that takes and what that looks like. But on the virtual side of it, like you don't know how many appointments, you know, that retailer has booked back to back, and definitely don't want to go over your time frame. So having a presentation or a catalog really helps keep things on track. And then like Crystal said, if you lose the connection or, you know, you're in and out, you know, if you have the details of the shoe there, at least the customer can also like read that information too while you're getting your sound back, and so on.
Are you showing collections, or is that the way when you present, when you're in your studio, are you presenting groups together or one?
Yeah, so that depends on the customer more than anything. Like if it's a new customer, obviously you're kind of showing them everything. If it's a current customer, you're probably going to show them like what's new and then kind of have a conversation about what's carrying over in what they bought from the previous year. So that really comes down to like, knowing who your customer is. And I think last week, I think it was Sarah from Worth's mentioned like sending the reps the sell through ahead of time. Like that's super key for us, like getting that feedback and that information. And then I also send like the catalog and price list usually the day before the meeting. That way the retailer has time to like review it quickly, and then it's not a total surprise when we're on the call. So if I didn't show them something, they can say, hey, what about this item? So yeah, that's really just, like I said, that's really just depends on who it is you're dealing with.
Do you do a dry run? Or do you
Yes.
practice?
So I'm like a little bit crazy, to be fair, but even though now, like, I mean, we started presenting Fall 21 back in kind of end of November, December, and still for every presentation, I do a dry run. I go into my little like studio area like an hour before I get set up. I like call into the link, make sure that's working, get all my lighting fixed, and just go through the presentation again to like mentally prepare. So even though I know the data and the information, it's still like something can go wrong. You know what I mean? Like a light maybe isn't working, or you're having Wi-Fi issues or whatever it is. There's just always something that can pop up. And I think also the more you practice the presentation virtually, then the smoother it is for the retailer as well. You're not kind of bouncing around so much, and that's key for sure.
How many presentations would you typically schedule per day?
So if it's a booking presentation, I try not to schedule more than a couple a day, because for me also there's like this whole hour of prep that I plan, but it's also mentally and physically and emotionally draining for some reason, even more so than than doing it in person. And for me, I think that's because I'm missing that feedback, like that human connection. I think, Michelle, as you said the other day, it's like we're working in 2D. And so you feel like you have to be like that more like outgoing and on it, and to really like get that energy across in a virtual meeting, where when you're face to face, that kind of happens more naturally. You get the other person's energy returned and just kind of builds. So yeah, so a booking presentation I do usually wouldn't do more than a couple a day, but that's also on top of like the internal Zoom meetings that we have. So, ultimately I don't want to be zoomed out by the time I get to my booking appointment. I don't want to be like completely exhausted from being on Zoom calls all day. I want to be as fresh as possible. So, but that's just me. And I like for Crystal, I mean, she has both hats. Like she's giving presentations and receiving presentations. So I'm sure like that in itself, it's a lot.
I am I okay, or am I a robot?
Yep, you're good. I
Good.
think
We'll see. I'm gonna turn my video off again just to keep. I can hear you guys okay.
excellent.
So, as long as you just stop me, Michelle, if I go into robot voice. But I'm the same. I try to do a morning and an afternoon, and being respectful of retailers' time as well. Right now, I think is a good time to get these virtual presentations done while the stores are closed. Um, just trying to fit everything in. Yeah, but it is exhausting. And I mean, one day we will be meeting again in person. We all know that. We'll be celebrating really big when we can have trade shows again. But I think something really important that keeps coming up with retailers is, how important it is for the relationships that we have together, because even more important now than ever, they're trusting us as sales reps to kind of guide us into what they need to be booking and buying. Because I mean, let's be honest, we can have the best photos, the best videos, the best internet connections, the best lighting, but nothing is the same as that, touch and feel of a shoe, or, for me, clothing or lingerie or whatever. But I as a buyer trust my reps in guiding me into the right direction and knowing my store and knowing my business into what I think they think I should buy. But also, as a sales rep, I feel the trust between me and my customers, that I can know what they're looking for, and if something might not be a good fit for their store, if they can't really tell on a Zoom call, they're trusting me to make that call for them as well.
So how much do you prepare ahead of time, or do you, with a retailer before your meeting, just in case things like this happen? Like if you were doing a product presentation and you lose your connection, like how much work have you done ahead of time? Or is it something that you just have to scrap the whole meeting and start again? Like, let's rep know how to handle the pre-work before it.
Yeah, so again, I think that depends on who the retailer is to you, right? Like I said, I try to send the information, the day before, but on like fall 21, for example, like on our lifestyle stuff, I don't want to necessarily send it too far ahead of time, because I want it still to kind of be the presentation to be interesting and them to be engaged still. But if I know, like, for example, I was at the cottage once and it was like a snowstorm, and it was like, I just had a feeling like it's not going to go well. And so I had my presentation and I had that connected to through the Wi-Fi, but then I called in on my iPhone and had that set up with video. And so what happened was exactly what I thought. We lost Wi-Fi, but because I still had my iPhone set up, I could still show and talk to the product until things came back. And I pre-warned the customer ahead of time. You know what I mean? It was like, I'm up north, there's a snowstorm, chances are I'm going to lose connectivity, but this is what I've done, so if that happens, just be patient. I'll still be able to show you the shoes and we'll kind of work through it. And I think ultimately, like I said at the beginning, like we are all in this together. Like retailers have tech issues as well. You know what I mean? We lose them. We're all in the same boat. It's an equal playing field when it comes to technology, because it just sometimes has a mind of its own. And so I think, us being patient with one another is key. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, no rep ever wants to be in a presentation and lose Wi-Fi. It's like the most sickening feeling, you know what I mean? When you're in the middle of a presentation, you're like going along and you're so excited. And then it's like, for F's sakes, like when it drops out, it's like that feeling in the pit of your stomach, and it's awful, right? It's awful. And it's like, you're stressed out about like getting back on. And so I think ultimately, like the best thing we can do for each other is be patient, because it's going to happen. So.
And there are a couple of little things. Again, Michelle, just give me a wave if I'm.
You're good now. You're good now.
There are a couple of things that you can do in the background to, cut the bandwidth and cut, I think that's what it's called, bandwidth, to help give you the bandwidth. If you have, 10 screens open, like I always do, all of those screens open in the background are going to take up the Wi-Fi signal. Everybody's at home with their kids teaching online. The more people who are on the Wi-Fi, that also takes that signal. So, in my instance today, I have my husband also was working. I had to make sure he's cut off of the Wi-Fi while I was on this call. Didn't work because the hydro went out, but that's kind of a different issue. But just making sure all of your screens are shut down. Also, when you go to share your screen, you don't want something kind of popping up that somebody might see that they shouldn't. So those are just little tips to make sure that you're getting the best bandwidth. It's all going into the Zoom. Just as a little sidebar.
Crystal, when you were off, how many presentations would you do in a day? Because I know you're on both sides, so I think it's valuable for
yeah, but luckily, the types of products that I buy and what I'm selling, the flow is completely different. So during my downtime of selling, luckily, is when I'm doing a lot of my buying. But I'm like Becky, I do get, we all are getting it, the Zoom exhaustion, because not only are we doing the sales presentations, we also have all the other meetings and everything else. But um, I would normally schedule probably one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And then that way you have enough time, because sometimes not every presentation is the same as well. Sometimes, you know your customers, so their timelines as well. Sometimes they want the whole line presentation. Sometimes you've been working with them for a long time. They just want to see sort of the newness. So that way you kind of can prepare. I am different in Becky, that I don't do a dry run through, because that would make me, I don't know, I would keep thinking, oh my goodness, I messed up, I screwed up. I definitely test everything and make sure that everything is running smoothly. But yeah, I mean, again, I think unfortunately we're going to be doing this for a little while longer. So I think each season, the more we communicate and talk together, the better we can be. So
I think though, like there's definitely, just to add on to that, Crystal, there's definitely some key benefits. Like before, when we were on the road having to do PKs, like if a store has how many doors, it's like you have to prioritize that, right? And now with Zoom, it's like I did a PK for a customer with 50 of their managers, you know what I mean? And in one shot. And so I think there are some like key benefits that I hope personally and like hope to continue, because I think the education side of it, being able to like speak directly to that many managers at one time in a season is essential. And I think like you said, Crystal, I mean, now is a good time because, there are a lot of stores that are closed or, are have a little bit of downtime, even if they're doing curbside, that they might have time to participate in something like that. So I think that side of it has been great from my perspective.
And I should change actually what I did say about that, because I realize how difficult it is as a retailer right now, fighting for every sale, and the extra work, especially if you don't have a website and trying to make sales that way. So, I mean, it is less busy maybe for being open all the time, but yeah, being scheduled certain times. And I know that certain retailers, they have certain days that they schedule as well, of their blocks of time. So I'm also trying to do that too, my blocks of time. These are my presenting, these are fitting everything else, other meetings and that sort of thing. So it's all just balancing. And to Becky's point, yeah, I think we need to embrace this sort of virtual connection a little bit. I know it's not the same as being in person, and that will never change. I know that, as soon as we can do things in person again, of course, that's we're all going to be running for it. But the better we get at using these sort of technical things that we have, I think it's just better to share information. Like Becky said, we can see more people at once. For PKs and that sort of thing, we can do them more often. I think it's the silver lining in the crappy year that we've had.
So it'll cut back on your travel time. When we're back and you can go and you can do your product presentations at different stores, but for PKs and etc., that could cut back on your travel time because you can do it through technology and you will have been accustomed to it.
Yeah, I think travel, but also just being able to get PKs out to more stores as well, because there's only so much time in a day when you're traveling to a physical location, right? So it definitely, I think, would allow us to be able to do PKs more frequently with more customers in one season.
Absolutely. And not only that, but a lot of retailers, they don't, not they don't want it, but they're conscious of the staff hours that they're having to pay. So for us to come in, all the reps in Ontario and across Canada and whatever we are, adding sort of that payment. I think they're appreciative of us doing things like this, that they can record and show their staff later on, so they can, watch it during store hours, that they're not bringing people in before they open or after they close, because for the next while, I think they'll be cautious of their spending, right? Even in their wages. So
Um, Joni Medlin has a question. She's asking where you ladies got your ring lighting and brand or type suggestions.
So my ring light is just off of Amazon, and it wasn't expensive. I think it was like maybe $40 or $50. And my iPhone can go in the middle of it if I need to, and it actually has like a little like remote as well. But my little guy has a lot of health issues, so as I said, my kids are home, and we really haven't left have haven't really gone outside of these four walls except to walk and that kind of thing since March. So yeah, so mine's just ordered off of Amazon, and it's not like I can check what the brand is. I don't know what it is offhand. Wasn't something I'd heard of before I purchased it, but it's one of the best things I've bought, I would say. Cause like I said, I mean, when I turn it off, it's a huge
A big
difference
difference.
in what in the difference that it makes. So
Crystal, do you have a preferred brand?
I don't have a preferred one. The one that I have right now, I bought from Henry's, so Canadian camera company. They do sort of in-store pickup if you're around any of their stores. I think I got it on sale, and it was around $90. I think it was regular 150, on sale for 100 or something. You can spend $50 or you can spend $250. As you get going, you might want to upgrade a little bit. If you're trying to show something a little bit like background, like if you've got your showroom behind you, you might want to invest in something that's a little bit stronger, or maybe get two ring lights as well. But I'm like Becky, like this one, it was fairly inexpensive. I'm also facing a window as well. So even if you don't have ring lights or studio lights and don't want to invest in that, there's little things that you can do to make it look a little bit better. So there with the ring light. I also grabbed a boot, so it's easier. This isn't my brand. Tiffany's on, you'll like this. But without the ring light and with the ring light. So you can just see the detail a little bit better. I think Becky is really smart to have a webcam as well. And I might invest in a webcam too, to be able to switch back and forth so you can show the product with a proper camera, because that does make a difference. But like I said, if you don't want to invest in a lot of these things, if you have a window in your office or in your showroom, if you face the window so the light is on you here, it definitely helps to look, and try not to have any light behind you as well. So if you're sitting in your office, your showroom, and you've got a big window behind you, try to change the direction of your desk so that the light is going on your face, just because that will be distracting behind as well.
I think, Crystal, you made a really good point though. Like, the setting up for virtual presentations doesn't have to be daunting, and it doesn't have to be expensive. Like, I think we all probably have some pieces from trade shows that we can put to use. And also, like you said, try to find a spot near a window to use natural lighting to help. And don't think that you have to have this like high class studio and 8 million light boxes. And like, we are all, it's a pandemic, and I think everyone is cautious, but we can still kind of use those small things, like I said, that just help make the presentation a little bit better ultimately.
And what about sound? Do you guys use, like, I know you have a mic right now, Becky, but Crystal, do you use a mic, or you just use
No, I mean, this is a good sort of lesson learned, because somebody made a comment, you can't really hear me that well. I'm just using the mic on my Mac computer. Sometimes I would punch in some earbuds, even the earbuds that come with your iPhone. You can plug those into your computer, and that will give you a microphone as well. Becky has her Britney Spears headset, And you can tell that it definitely makes a difference. And especially if there's background noise and kids around, then she kind of keeps everything in here. So I would definitely recommend using a microphone, but it doesn't even have to be fancy like Becky. You can use your iPhone, any sort of earbuds that have a microphone on it will help.
Yeah, I mean, the main reason I have this one is because the microphone also has noise canceling. So as I said, like my daughter's little office is here, and when she's in class, which is basically from 9 to 3:20, and she's on and her teacher's on. So typically I don't have this side over my ear so that I can hear what her teacher's saying, but ultimately I don't want my customers to hear the teacher in French, like babbling on in French behind, or my daughter, behind me. So yeah.
It's crazy, but it's amazing how we've adapted. I just want to make a note here for everyone. Diane Thurston has given her what she's using for her ring light. She got one off Amazon called Live Beauty Light. It has 3 settings and it was $50. So just putting it out there for if anyone still needs to look for equipment or wants to enhance their studio or their home office. Ladies, we've run through our questions that we had prepared for. So I don't know if there's anything else that you guys wanted to add, or if there's any other questions that someone out there wants to ask.
I would just say one more thing, and I mean, we talked about this a little bit in the beginning, but ultimately, like just find a way to be comfortable when you're presenting. Because I think the more like nervous you are or stressed out you are, then that's kind of what comes across. And be patient, like be patient with yourself even, right? Like ultimately you have to go into a presentation thinking that there's something that's going to go wrong. And if nothing goes wrong, if nobody walks behind you, if kids don't come and ask you questions, like it's a win at the end of the day. And take pride in those small little victories, because at this point, like every day is hard. It's just hard. And so, we're all in it together when it comes to this virtual thing, and just try to get comfortable, try to be yourself, and just, if you're not comfortable sharing your screen and sharing the boots, then don't do that. Find what works best for you, because ultimately you're the one that has to give the presentation and do the presentation, and you don't want to be stressed out about how you're going to multitask if it's not what you're comfortable with. So
I mean, we're not broadcasters. So hang on, sorry, Chris. So we're not broadcasters, right? Like, I don't know, maybe some of you guys, went to broadcasting school and ended up selling shoes. I mean, I don't know, but I think it's completely acceptable and better to be human, right? Just to be human and be yourself.
And that's just it, Michelle. Like we keep saying that we are who we are. We're all in this together. We all have husbands and children and dogs and everybody around, and it's just how we have to work now. So we just let it go and just figure it out. And we were talking about the shopping channel a little bit before I think we got on, and I've been watching all you guys out there, if there's any reps on, watching some of them doing, and they're doing the same thing we are, like this. So if the consumer is buying from a sales rep on the shop, not to bring that up, but a sales rep, broadcasting on national television, sure enough, we can be comfortable enough to put a small presentation together through a Zoom. It is not ideal and it is not going to last forever. But, the main thing is just be comfortable. Things are going to happen. Like, look at my hydro's going to go out, internet's going to go out, and you just make it work.
yeah.
So
And I think
and
also,
I see a question. Sorry, Becky, go ahead. And then
no, I was just going to say, and I think also remembering that the retailers are in the same situation. You know what I mean? Like early on, it was like when I was presenting, it was like I always had my background on. I was always like trying to be professional. And then like one day I was on with one of my biggest customers in Canada, and I had my background on, but Abby is standing right here going, mommy, and he could hear her, and he's like, is that your daughter in the background? And I'm sure it was weird because it's the background, but he can hear mommy. So I was like, yes, she's, at home, not supposed to be bothering me at the moment. So he's like, put her on, put her on. So, I mean, I dropped the background and she's staying there. And like, he talked to her for a few minutes, asked her how school was going. And so, I mean, for me, that was like, okay, like we're all people, you know, we all have our own set of circumstances, but I think, you know, we're all understanding that, you know, this is just life.
And when we were planning this a couple of days ago, Crystal and Becky and I met, and I asked Crystal not, like, specifically, please don't have your background on, because sometimes in board meetings, Crystal will have her background on, or Diane will have her background on, and it's nice to, and I wanted for this presentation just for everyone to see it, it's okay. Like, it's.
You mean Becky, because I never have my background on. They
No,
always know
Becky,
when it's
Becky. Sorry.
Full disclaimer. No, I just wanted to address Joni is a retailer beginning to sell from home, conducting appointments with clients. So definitely, hi Abby. She dressed up for us and everything. But yeah, Joni, this definitely can be transferred into that. I mean, we're all just trying to sell, whether it's a sales rep to our wholesale customers, or I've been doing a little bit of that as well. And we actually have another webinar coming up, I believe the beginning of March. So we'll have some retailers coming on for that one as well. And you'll have other tips, you know, of what other retailers are doing to sell like this, because really the reality is we have to meet people where they are. We're all at home right now. We all, at least until the end of February, will still be at home in Ontario anyway. So this is just, we've got to work through it. So
there is an anonymous attendee who's, I'm just going to read the comment. Another good thing to keep in mind is to try to have your laptop elevated. I always have mine in a shoebox when I present, so that you are not looking down but up. It looks like all three of you ladies have this going on, but not sure if everyone knows that. Very good point. Thank you, Anonymous. I don't know why you're anonymous, but thank you.
I will flip my computer around. It's a good point, because normally I do shoe boxes. I don't know if this will, I'll turn the light out too. So it's just on the table. I mean, you just make do with what you have, right? Doesn't have to be fancy, but it does have to be up a little bit.
Absolutely. And again, when I think of how far we've come since March, like when we first started having, when we had our first board meeting via Zoom in March, we're just like, we're all looking up, and we're all messed up. I mean, we were all messed up. Look at how far everyone has come. So on the
Thank you.
What's that?
I just said it's a good point, Anonymous. Thank you.
Very good point, Anonymous. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to reinforce that. So I think if that is it, we'll sign off. If any members would like one-on-one training for a virtual presentation, just give me a shout or shoot me an email. It's a member benefit that it's free of charge, just one-on-one 45-minute session.
Just to add to that, and don't be afraid to ask, because even in this, we didn't get into the nitty-gritty of press this button, this is how you share your screen. But I mean, it takes time to learn that. So don't be afraid to reach out and ask. We're more than happy to do that, the walkthroughs, the actual how-to part.
All right. Thank you, ladies. Thank you. Thank you for coming on, everyone. And our next session is March 3rd. March 3rd, not March 3rd, February 3rd. What am I thinking? February 3rd. And that will be, Janelle will be having a virtual fireside chat with Deanne Brisebois, the president and CEO of Retail Council of Canada, and she'll just give us an update of where they're at from their advocacy, from the retail advocacy perspective. So thanks, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.